Hey everybody, welcome back to the Matt Report. Amazing interview today with Alex King of Crowd Favorite, recently acquired by VeloMedia. We're going to talk about that in today's episode. One thing I do have to highlight though, and during the interview of this podcast, the original interview, I was not recording with this mic. I was recording with the mic in the webcam. So I do apologize for the sound being off. It's really embarrassing, and it's still a great episode. Matter of fact, it's one of my favorite episodes. It's just a little miff that we had to have some poor audio on my end, so I do apologize about that. Please continue to listen. It is a great episode. You can learn a lot from Alex. And yesterday, in the last episode I published was with Jay Goldman of 10up. So I've got two WordPress agency founders who really get it, and it's just amazing to hear the undercurrent of how important it is to hire the right team and how you do that, right? How do you interview these people? How do you find these people? How do you set the right culture? We're going to learn about that from Alex today, but definitely go back and check out the episode from Jake. Also very important to hear his point of view. Other than that, things are going awesome. Thanks to everybody who's supporting me in the Matt Report Pro community. It's an amazing time, folks, connecting with each other, learning how to build a better business. They're all collaborating on the community forums inside the Matt Report. You want to learn more about that? It's mattreport.com/join. And I've still got the discount code running. It's MattPro10. Use that at checkout. Get your sign up for just $10 when you sign up. Other than that, you want to support the show, share it. Let your friends know on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, any place that you culminate with other WordPress folks. Let them know about the Matt Report. It is a growing community and a great time. mattreport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Matt Report. As always, your host, Matt, for the #1 WordPress business podcast on the web. Unfortunately, you, Alex, our guest today, sat down with my enemy, my arch nemesis over at WP Elevation. I'm just kidding. He's a good guy. But thanks for taking the time to hang out with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So if you're in the WordPress world, you're running a WordPress business, and you don't know who Alex is, where the heck have you been? Probably a legend of WordPress business, as WordPress businesses go. But I'm going to let him do the introduction because I might get carried away. Alex, who are you, and what do you do?
I'm a developer. I've been involved in WordPress since it was B2, before it was forked. I had the good fortune to be there during that time and be contributing code to the community. So some of the things that I had been playing around with B2 and some of the features I'd built actually got rolled into the first version of WordPress, which is pretty cool to say now that it's become this behemoth on the web. I was an independent developer from 2003 through 2007. 2007, I started Crowd Favorite, and we grew from just me to 15, 16 people, and now we're merging with VeloMedia, bringing our numbers up just over 50.
Nice. Congratulations on that, by the way. There's a whole slew of things that I want to get in to talking about. A lot of the folks in the audience are freelancers or just starting their WordPress gig, be it building a website for somebody that they know for a few $100 or a few $1,000 to folks who are building plugins and themes and such. Thinking back to when you started, which is like ages ago in terms of WordPress and the internet. What was it like getting started with WordPress? Do you have a particular memory of a project that you did that said, you know what, this is because of this, I think I can turn this into a career, or I can make a business out of this?
Well, early on, the community was very different. It was a lot of developers and people that were hacking on their tools as well as using them. So releasing stuff into that community was a very different experience. You had people that were interested in interacting with the code, and you're being involved on kind of a developer level rather than what the majority of users are today, which are people that are using WordPress as a product. and are interested in solving business problems, and less interested in tinkering with what goes on behind the scenes. So the experience of releasing stuff into the early community was very different than the experience of releasing stuff today. Support requests were very different. There's a lot more understanding that this was something that people were doing in their spare time, because there was no commercialization opportunities, because there was no market at that point that had yet to be established. So there was a number of, I guess, differences there that are pretty significant. Where should I go from here?
That's fine. Do you remember, so Crowd Favorite, age-old company, and I'm going to keep saying that because for folks that don't know, it's even to large firms, larger WordPress firms like Web Dev Studios or Tenna, folks are always sort of harkening back to Crowd Favorite. When you started the company, was it basically just a services-based business? We'll build your WordPress solution for you. Did you already have the future vision to go into building larger plugins? Sort of where did you set your feet in the ground as a WordPress business?
Yeah, so I had done a startup with a friend of mine building a web-based feed reader, which actually would be an interesting business now since Google Reader's out of it. But we shut that down around the time Google Reader came out because they were just taking over the space. So it was early 2007 I came out of that. And I got an opportunity to build the All Things D site for the Wall Street Journal. And a friend of mine and I did that. His name's Adam Tao. And after we finished that project, that really kind of showed people that WordPress could be used in large publishing environments for more than just a blog. I think that there were other, I think maybe the New York Times was using WordPress for blogging at that point, but there weren't large publishers that were using WordPress as a CMS at the time. And I had been using WordPress as a CMS for various sites since 2004, back before there were pages and things like that. So I had some experience there and was able to apply that for the All Things D site. And from there, I started getting more and more inquiries about interesting projects. I think a combination of the work that we did and the people sort of opening up to it as a platform and seeing the possibilities there.
Yeah. And this is, that comes naturally with the territory. You get a project like All Things D, and sort of now you're connected to the larger publishing world, or interesting projects start to come. My audience is going to want to know, how did you get All Things D? Did you wake up one morning with an email that said we need a website built, and they just broadcasted it to anybody, or how did you land that?
They had an RFP out, and I was unaware of that. They had some responses, but they weren't getting responses that they really felt comfortable with. And actually, Matt Mullenweg reached out to me and said, "There's this RFP out there. Would you be interested in sending a response?" So things kind of went from there. So yeah, I mean, the previous 5 years that I'd spent in the community contributing led to that opportunity.
You sort of opened me up to a pretty good segue. I don't want to jump ahead too quickly, but Chris Lemma he made a post on Torque Mag and sort of referenced one of my posts on the Matt Report where I said it actually might have been a reference to the merger of VeloMedia and your company. We're going to start to see these things sort of happen now, right? As companies like yours that have been around for a while, putting out amazing projects and amazing work, finally starting to kind of grow up, for lack of a better word, and sort of see that Silicon Valley mentality of acquisitions, mergers, funding, that kind of thing.
I wouldn't call it Silicon Valley mentality. It's very much about real work and real products and real valuations, not what can 3 million users potentially be worth 10 years in the future.
So that's pretty amazing. What do you see the differences between, because Chris writes his 5 differences about what's the difference between WordPress companies and Silicon Valley startups. Do you have a particular angle or view on what we do in the WordPress world versus sort of the glamorization of the Silicon Valley consumer-facing products?
I spent 5 years in the Bay Area working for startups. I was at 2 startups. One was acquired and one fizzled out. And so I got to see that up close and personal in the late 90s, early 2000s, right in the boom. And that was actually what drove me to move from the Bay Area to Denver and get out of that environment. It was frustrating to me to see so many people working so hard on something and success looking like all of that going away, which is what happens so much when there's an exit, whatever that exit may be. Maybe it's an acquisition, maybe it's an acqui-hire, maybe it's a product getting rolled into a bigger company or a company wanting to buy you out because you're a competitor. The chances of your company actually going public and being able to control its destiny and continue to invest in the products and solutions that everybody's been working towards, the odds are just incredibly small for that happening. And that definition of success didn't make sense to me. I was interested in building things that were going to have more lasting value and being able to have more control of that. So I started building my own products. I was contributing to WordPress, and then the combination of those experiences, kind of led to the opportunities to create Crowd Favorite and start building a team.
Did you feel more relaxed working with WordPress and sort of the community, although it was very different back then? Was it a whole different vibe? Or what were the biggest differences that you found from working at a startup that was pressured with either launching a product with investment dollars and hoping to get an exit versus sort of build my own stuff and take my own pace?
Yeah, I mean, almost all of my contributions to WordPress have been selfishly driven. I've had an idea that I was interested in, and I followed it up, and then released it so other people could use it as well. That's I believe that kind of where self-interest can intersect with kind of making the world better, releasing stuff out for people to use. If you have good intentions behind all of that, good things come from it.
I want to stick with the Silicon Valley thing because I think that it's being sold as this sort of sexy thing that's what we're all shooting for. Build a product, build a service, get 1 million users on it, retire on an island. That's what we see with like This Week in Startups and other startup shows. Hell, I even do a WordPress startup challenge where entrepreneurs from early startups come and kind of pitch a host of judges for their sort of claim to fame. What is it that folks aren't seeing on the inside that you saw?
Well, I think it depends on what your personal definition of success is. I was on a panel at WordCamp San Francisco, and my friend Shane Perlman talked about his one of the things that's important to him is to be able to go surf. He lives in Santa Cruz, right? And so his business is a vehicle for enabling his lifestyle. And if he can go surf and spend time working with the people he loves, building things that he's passionate about, right? That's success for him. For me, people said, I've been asked over the years, like, are you going to sell CrowdFavorite? Are you going to, try to get an exit out of this? And that was never the plan. My thought process was basically, well, if I sold CrowdFavorite, what would I want to do? I would want to build another team just like it and do the same stuff, right? And build interesting things and work with interesting people. So I guess the motivation for your end goal should help you figure out how to get there. And I think it's important that, at least for me, I didn't want it to be something where, okay, at the end of the day, there's this brass ring, right? You got to figure out how to get part of that into every day along the way. And so that was kind of the approach I took.
And again, I'm not out in San Fran. I'm not in the Valley. I'm just looking at from the tech news, the tech buzz. But even talking to Shane, I asked him this question too. It's like you don't really hear about sort of the WordPress stuff, mixed in with TechCrunch until large firms like yourself sort of make the headlines. Why is that? I mean, are people, investors, businesses in the Valley, in that scene, look at WordPress as like, it's never going to be as big a target as a Facebook or as a Twitter? Is it open source that they're afraid of? Like investors look at it and say, ooh, we don't want to get mixed up with this open source stuff. Any kind of insight to that?
That's an interesting question. I think that there's a couple of different ways we can approach that. One is to answer more directly. Yes, I think open source is somewhat at odds with kind of the celebrity of the tech press. A lot of people that are involved in open source are not in it for the same reasons as somebody who's running around trying to get $10 million in VC money to try to get their company flipped. Right? It's a very different mindset. I think also you don't see, like, the WordPress ecosystem is very large and growing, but it hasn't been from the beginning about commercialization, whereas, say, the app economy for iOS has been always a vehicle for developers to get paid. I think that it's also interesting to think about this in terms of our larger society and how press and media in general works. It's so much of it is a for-profit business now. They're interested in doing the type of reporting that's going to drive revenue for them, whether it be page views or viewership on like a YouTube channel or sponsorships or things like that. And so the people that have money become to be more interesting there. And there's a great line from a show I watch on ESPN, pardon the interruption. They're talking about why they would mess with the different formats for different playoffs and things like that, where, like, it's perfectly good. Don't add another round of playoffs to the NBA, or don't add another around to the NCAA tournaments, these play-in weekends and stuff. It said, Tony Kornheiser said, the answer to all of your questions is money.
Right. And
that's what's driving all of these decisions. And I find it really interesting to look at, kind of use that as a lens to look at some of these questions where, all of these things are businesses. They have to pay people, they have to get revenue, and they, depending on their various approaches, that's going to lead them in various different directions.
I love that the comparison of apps and the commercialization of apps, and sort of that was the whole driving force. It was, build an app, put it on the iTunes App Store, charge whatever you want up to a certain thing, and we all settled on 99 cents. Like, what the hell? But then like you say with WordPress, it's not. The vision wasn't to just start out and commercialize themes and plugins. It just sort of happened. Do you think? First, I want to ask: do you think that the WordPress ecosystem is still growing? Yes or no? Second, do you think there's any problems with commercializing the plugins and themes as you see it?
Yes, I think the WordPress ecosystem is still growing. I think that there are a variety of challenges within the community around non-commercial products, commercial products, and customer expectations. I think managing expectations is the most important thing that you can do to be successful. A combination of managing, meeting, and exceeding expectations, I suppose. But sometimes there is a general opinion or viewpoint in the community that makes attempts to manage those expectations sort of like swimming upstream. For a long time, it was having anything commercial at all was going against the grain of the community. Then we got into different licensing kerfuffles. And now, what's that?
To say the least.
Yeah. I've been happy to steer clear of that stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing that that I think is happening now is you have a lot of free plugins on .org that are somehow commercially supported or have a smaller enough user base that the developers, it's a hobby for them, they enjoy supporting it, and the support is really good. There's another collection of plugins, like a lot of the stuff that I've written, that I wrote it, I put it out there. If it works for you, great. If not, I'm sorry, I really don't have time to individually help people with this. And then you have the commercial plugins, which have, I think, appropriately a support expectation with them. But there's a certain amount of sophistication about the community, about how development works, how products are released, that's required to kind of understand which is which. So quite reasonably, a large portion of the community is looking at their past experience outside of the WordPress community and seeing, when I get a product, I get support, whether I paid for it or not. And I think that that's a challenge for people that are trying to make contributions within the community. It's important that they understand that, and that we've chosen to release some of our stuff just on GitHub rather than putting it on .org because it's focused more towards developers. It's not something we can easily support for end users, etc. And we don't want them to have the experience of being frustrated with us as a result of trying to use one of our products.
Right. So it's fair to say that you obviously support the commercialization plugins and themes to grow a business, right? In order to provide support and reinvestment and innovation into a plugin or a theme.
Yeah, I mean, we have two commercial WordPress products. We have dozens of freely available products, plugins, themes. We have not taken the product road to building the business. It's, Crowd Favorite is a services business. But I certainly think that, products or focused services that, sort of as products are certainly, viable approaches.
I think that folks who are young developers or people who want to start a business, the barrier to entry for WordPress is so low that it's easy for them to build sites and get all this stuff put together through plugins and themes. But then they start getting that entrepreneurial bug where they're like, okay, I too want to make $1 million theme business, like I just read on ThemeForest, or I want to sell these plugins and do it and make $1 million business, like I see on Code Canyon. Do you think that there should be one? Do you think prices of commercialized plugins and themes should go up? Should it be separated out from support to a one-time fee for the plugin? Any advice for those that are trying to grow more or increase their revenue with their plugins or themes?
Well, I think that the theme market has become fairly well commoditized. I think that you can choose how you want to differentiate yourself. The difference between one of the fundamental differences between a services business and a product business is with a services business, you want to have fewer clients that are higher value. And with a product business, you're looking to have many customers that are each individually lower value, and you're going for an economy of scale. Trying to figure out which of those you want to do, I think, is really important, because you have to tune your offerings, your team, etc., to that approach. At CrowdFavorite, we're much higher touch with our clients than we can be with our customers, right? There's just you look at the money coming in, and that's where your attention is directed. And I think that expectations are generally along those lines as well. Like, our clients expect more time communicating with us, discussing problems, interacting with us, than our customers do, right? They typically seem to be pretty happy to use self-service documentation, support forums. We're pretty responsive there, things like that. So those types of businesses have very different growth patterns. Getting back to the original question, how would I look at trying to grow a product business? The first thing I would look at is, how can I differentiate myself, right? And I would hope that would be something that's easily answered by something I was passionate about, whether it's a product I really care about, whether it's a way of providing service to my customers, whether it's a certain philosophy that I try to make sure that everything we do embodies. I think that the marketplace is crowded enough at this point that if you can't easily answer how is my team, how are my offerings different than everyone else's, your customers are going to have a hard time answering that as well, and you're not going to be as successful.
That's great. That's a great takeaway for product. Because a lot of folks will jump into the market and be like, I'm just going to make another responsive theme, or the options are going to be the exact same thing, or I'm going to make another contact form plugin or something like that. These are just examples. And a lot of the time they're just looking at what the competition is doing and replicating it, and trying to pass it off as innovation, or at least as their own flavor. And differentiating yourself, telling a better story, positioning, and things like that are super important on the product side. And then taking into account for support costs and what you're actually going to have to reinvest or hire new people and that kind of thing. Get down a system. We just, right before you came on, we had Mason James from WP Valet on the show, and that's exactly what he talked about, getting a system down, tracking time, hiring the right people to put in place to support this stuff. I do want to jump to your agency side, to the service business side. I've heard, I've had other folks on the show that are either head of a large ad agency or running their own boutique firm, and they say selling a $5,000 website is the same sort of process, and you're going through the same hoops, and you're having the same discussions as you have a $50,000 site, as a $150,000 site or solution. Does that ring true to you, thinking back to the early days to where you're at today?
Sort of. I mean, in the same way that a Mercedes and a Hugo are both cars. Yeah, you open the door, you put the key in the ignition, you turn it on, and it gets you from A to B. What everything about that journey is totally different, though. I don't know where to begin with that.
That particular statement coming from one of my past guests, Jose Cavalier, used to work at Razorfish, one of the early people branching out to the West Coast. Now he has his own firm, and I think he was giving that as advice to folks who are starting their own agency. So it's fair to say that you might go through the same amount of stuff, for lack of a better word, selling a $5,000 site as you would a $50,000 site. So let's set our sights on selling a $50,000 site, because you're still going to go through the same amount of stuff. So if you want to grow and excel and get more revenue, let's go for those clients that have that money and understand the value. Was that true for you, for your success?
One of the main reasons that the merger with VeloMedia made so much sense to me was Kareem's team and their experience servicing high-end clients. It's not the same as servicing a mom-and-pop shop. The amount of touch, the expectations, the dealing with their internal politics, it takes a lot of different experience, and it's not something that's an easy transition. Looking at where we were, team, I think we were 16 at the time. We had 3 project managers, one person that did some inbound sales. We didn't have an accounts person. We didn't have a dedicated biz dev team. We didn't have processes in place for the project managers to be as proactive and as high touch. And so as a result, we had clients that appreciated what we did well, which was create a great technical solution to various problems. And sometimes they were more technical clients themselves, and they didn't need some of that the high-touch service. But when you start looking at the next level of clients that you want to get, the RFP process is different, the pitching process is different. You're going up against teams that are flying in 3 or 4 person teams and showing work and stuff just in the pitch process. Well, that's totally different than going down to a local business and spending a half hour pitching them on your services. Yes, the process is the same in that you try to convince them that you can solve their problems and give them a price, but the overall experience and how to do that well at each level changes quite a bit. And getting back to expectations, if the client has an expectation that there is someone who is a separate account manager that they're going to talk to every day, and then they have their project manager that expects to be working on a daily basis with a dedicated project manager on your team, and they've got a tech lead that wants to interact with your tech lead, you start to have different layers to things that you need to be able to do well in order to succeed with that client. You need to have people that are savvy enough to understand how to make both your direct contact on the client look good to their internal bosses and their internal structure, while also working with maybe someone 2 or 3 levels up from them and making sure that they're getting updated and feeling good about the project, and not getting surprised at any point along the way. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Right. And what I'm hearing, because folks in the audience, they're here to sort of take away some kind of tidbit that they can kind of apply in their own business, or get ready to look at it and say, I might even pivot my vision a little bit. What I hear a lot in the first half of your answer is positioning, right? Your crowd favorite excelling at building, either intricate applications or, really dynamic stuff like building the code and that kind of thing. VeloMedia, sure, they're going to fly with the big boys. They're going to, sort of have the sizzle side of it, for lack of a better word. How important is positioning to you? Like, many folks are going to start out and they're like, I'm going to do design, development, marketing, strategy, wireframing, content, migration, support, product. You're going to do all this stuff. Why not just focus on great development and partnering with firms or ad agencies? Is that fair advice to someone just starting out trying to pick a path to really excel at?
I would say, you're going to be most successful doing the thing you're most passionate about. So whatever that is, do that, and as you're doing it, figure out ways to make that successful. Maybe that's building your own team. Maybe that's partnering with another team. Maybe that's deciding, what I really love doing is the building part. I don't like the selling part or the management part. I'm going to go get a job somewhere that with other people that love the same stuff I do. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, this is the part of what I do that I really love, and I want to maximize that.
Let's talk about you. Right? It's developing, right, that you really love. It's building that, or is it building the team? And has it changed over the years?
It has changed over the years, but building stuff and getting my hands on the code is still what really energizes me. But it was I don't know, I was about 3 years in, and there were some dynamics in the team that I didn't think were what they should be, and we had lost someone on the team that I was sorry to see go, and so why is this team not working the way I think it should? And a big reason was because I wasn't focused on that. And so I started to focus more on that, started treating the team as my product. And from there, things started to improve. The culture became something I was much more focused on. And I realized that it's not something that I can just leave to chance. It needs to be something that's more intentional, and something that I need to invest more in.
That's a perfect segue. How did you mentally, physically prepare for that sort of challenge? Because now you come to realize that you became a founder. This building this team, building this business, might not have been the number one goal when you set out, but here you are, X amount of years later. It's in front of you. You're doing it. Who did you turn to sort of help with growing culture, stepping back and saying, how do I even define culture? What steps did you take?
I've been fortunate to meet a lot of really bright people that have been really driven in their careers, and to be friends with them. So I just kind of turn to my own network and try to, anytime I have a chance for any type of birds of a feather meetup, those are my favorite ones. Most recently, last year I went to Owner Camp, which is set up by Happy Cog, and it's a 3-day retreat for digital agency owners, about 30 people. And my experience has been that the most successful people are also the most open and giving with their advice and ideas, and they're willing to share anything because they know that they're going to have more good ideas in the future, right? There's no monopoly on this one idea. This is the thing that's going to make it or break it. And so, having the opportunity to have those sorts of people as peers has been incredibly gratifying, and hopefully I've been able to reciprocate in some manner.
Shameless plug, if you head on over to wpmentor.org, a little site that I started, if you're looking for that kind of help, feel free to apply and or search through the folks who've already signed up to WP Mentor. Some amazing stories like that coming out of it. How did the conversation, for as much as you can kind of reveal, between yourself and VeloMedia come about? How many cigars did you buy Chris Lemma at that introduction? But how did that come about? When did you say, what, I think this is the time, this is the right fit? Any insight to that?
Yeah, I actually didn't really get to. I knew Chris by reputation, but I didn't really get to know him too much until the process got going.
And then you were like, "Oh God, where's the eject button?"
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So Kareem and I met initially at WordCamp San Francisco, and got a chance to talk a little bit then. And then we started. We spent a little bit of time together at Pressnomics last fall. We started talking in more detail about our various teams and the strengths and what it was we were trying to do. Again, kind of harkening back to just kind of birds of a feather conversation and sharing challenges and things like that. And it became immediately apparent that we were trying to do the same things, and we had the same approach to culture, but we were our teams were kind of coming together from two different perspectives. And as we were trying to build up to what they could do with project management and account management, they were trying to establish themselves technically and put together kind of infrastructure and best practices and stuff that we'd built over the last 6.5 years. So when like everything falls into place like that, it becomes really obvious what the next steps are. And so yeah, basically that's what happened.
Nice. You mentioned something about building sort of these processes and steps over the last 6.5 years. As far as I know, there is no Bible to this stuff, right? There is no blueprint to doing this stuff and building your own internal processes. What's your experience with that? I mean, is it a custom thing that you have to build in place that gels perfectly well with the team that you have? Or is it like Scrum, where you're just like, this is what we do, 1, 2, 3, rinse and repeat? Any advice to building that sort of internal process for folks?
So for us, I think it's been a matter of trying to establish culture. And one of the things we have in our intranet is on our process page, it says, if you ever find yourself following a process that doesn't make sense to you, it's your job to stop and ask why. And one of several things is going to happen. Somebody's going to explain to you, this is the reason why we put this process in place, and these are the benefits of it, and this is what it's trying to do. And now you're no longer going to be frustrated that you're doing this thing that doesn't make sense, because you're going to understand it. Or asking that question is going to prompt someone to say, you know what, we put it in place 3 years ago because we had this problem, but we fixed that problem 2 years ago, and we're still doing this thing, and it's actually a waste of time, so let's stop doing it, right? But either way, it's got to be something that's intentional and team-based, where the decisions we're making, the things we're doing, we need to be thinking about why we're doing them and how we can be doing them better and constantly improving those things. And everyone on the team has to be empowered to make suggestions and implement improvements. So that's basically the approach that we've taken, is to try to bake that into the culture.
And from a real 101 level, you're managing processes and documenting this stuff in an intranet, like you said, pretty straightforward. You log in and there's some like scenarios that have already been documented. How does that look?
Yeah, we have a WordPress-based intranet. We try to have as few processes as possible, but we also try to be very intentional about how we do things and make sure that we're constantly learning from things that have or haven't been successful. So one of the things about coming into an environment like this is the first few months can be somewhat painful because doing things the way you've always done them doesn't always work, right? It's like, oh, you're doing it this way. Well, actually, we do it this way, and here are the reasons why. And there's no way to shortcut that process. You can't just give somebody a brain dump of, here's 6 years of experience that has led to this thing, and have them, have it just be innate and a natural part of their thought process. It's so, I often hear from people after about 3 months, like, I knew everything. I was the man or the woman wherever I was, and I came in, I just felt dumb for 2 months because I didn't understand why things were happening the way they were. And we try to prep people for it and tell them that, look, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of reasons for things, the way we do things. You're not going to understand it all. That's fine. That's expected. That doesn't mean that you're not getting it. It's just going to take a few months for everything to click into place.
Right. Is there one example, real basic, that is very common that you see this in? A customer asks to modify a page on an event site. Developer says, yeah, I just SSH into the server, I modify the code, hit save. No, that's not how you do it in our company.
Yeah, that's actually gotten a lot better because we've invested so much in our internal automation tools. We have a set of tools that we've released, open source tools for Capistrano and making it work well with WordPress. There's 2 Ruby gems that we maintain, Capistrano WP and another one called Steps that we build on top of. And the automation is not just for deploying client sites without having to worry about them crashing and going down and being able to revert, although that is a huge benefit of them, but it's also for our internal benefit and for our development process. When you have a framework and you have tools, it helps codify the processes that you want to support, right? So we have our Git repos as the site root. We have configuration files. We have configuration files that can be sent to production by the automation tools, for development by the automation tools. We have a fixtures server where a known set of good data is stored. We have a script where you can say, I want to set up this project, and it pulls down a set of data, it pulls down the Git repo, it configures everything, and you're up and running in 2 or 3 minutes with a local development environment. And that makes it easy for people to roll in on a project and not spend a whole day trying to get it set up. It gives people a framework in which they see how things are done. So when they're setting up a new project, it's like, oh, we need this thing, we need this thing, we need this thing, and it's clear why, right? Because the next person to set up the project can now just run that one command and have everything set up for them. Mm-hmm. We've even gone so far as to creating a Bootstrap script that we run on new laptops that installs all the right tools and configures like a local DNS server, and you can create .dev folders within your web root, and they automatically resolve and things like that. That works together with, so everybody's on the same tool set, and then that's a script that we can rerun whenever we need to update the tools. So we've done a lot of investment internally in that type of foundation, and it makes us much more efficient, right? Whether or not that cost was being passed on to clients or not, it's not having to have people either with a whole bunch of setup time that's not billed or setup time that is billed. The end result is better, right? They're doing more valuable work. They're more they feel better about what they've done when they go home. The client's getting more bang for their buck.
Mm. That's an amazing lesson for folks who are out there, maybe looking at that and saying, "Oh God, that's too much. I would never do all that stuff. I just have MAMP on my computer and boom, I got my environment and there I go." The difference is when you're dealing with these larger clients with this value. Again, we go back to that Hugo versus a Mercedes. You get to the Hugo, there's no heat, there's no leather, there's just a stick shift and a key that you have to turn. You get into the Mercedes, there is no key. It says your name. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It just starts when you think it, when you tell it to start. And sort of these processes that Alex and his team has built all goes into that experience. Client's going to look at Crowd Favorite and say, I'm going to go with Crowd Favorite because look at this process. I know that there's this chain of events that fires off, which will help for quality control. You know where something may have broken down the line. A developer leaves the team, another developer gets input. It's easier to start from where the other person left off, or a piece of the project needs to scale. All of a sudden, we can bring in other developers to this and know where we are in this process as best as possible. So that's an amazing piece of advice. And again, it's not one thing that you can just tell people, go, this is what you have to do. It takes that time over those 6 years, like you said, to ramp that up. Certainly not an easy task.
Yeah, and it takes a choice to make the investment too, because the time that you're spending building those tools and establishing that process and investing in it is time that you're not billing to clients.
Mm-hmm. And it's a scary thing, right? Even for us, we're a small team for full time, and it's like, okay, I'd love to sit there and document everything for a week or set up these processes. But when can you do it when you have pipeline and you're trying to get this stuff done? Definitely a give and take, and when to invest in that system always crops up in our meetings, and you just have to balance it as best as possible, at least from what I can tell.
I think it's valuable, just before we move on from that,
Sure.
to try to take a more long-term view. And this kind of gets back to the Silicon Valley stuff as well, right? If you're trying to build something for 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to make different decisions than you would make if you're trying to build something for an exit 6 months from now. And I think when you look at, it's sort of the difference between like systems theory and Western approach of breaking everything down in individual parts. Like if when you try to understand something, you try to understand it by looking at how everything interacts together, you're going to make different decisions than if you're looking at a whole bunch of individual atomic things.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of thing with a long-term versus short-term focus.
Mm-hmm. It is tremendous stuff when you get to step back and look at the 50,000-foot view. What are we going to see in the future come from the introduction of two great teams of Crowd Favorite and VeloMedia? Anything that on the horizon that you can talk about?
The first thing for us is, I think the next 6 months is just making sure that those teams are working really well together. Kind of going back to my last comment about the long-term view and making sure that what you're doing is really building value. We don't want to ever be in a position where we bite off more than we can chew, right? So immediately running out and trying to get a client that maybe we couldn't have gotten before is probably not the right next step, right? The right next step is to make sure the processes that we have in place, the processes that they have in place are complementing each other, and where there's overlap and where there's disconnects or differences, how are those getting resolved? Mm-hmm. For our team, we now have a variety of remote offices. How does the Denver office work with the Bucharest office and the Los Angeles office and the Las Vegas office, et cetera? So I think, for the next couple of months, we probably run things very similar to the way they have been and work on some of those internal things. At the same time, we're not going to be turning away new opportunities that come as a result. We're going to be, working doubly hard to make sure that the experience that new clients have with us is a really great one.
Last super serious question of the formal interview. Super serious. I mean, this is probably the most professional question I've ever asked. Who wins in an arm wrestling match, you or Jake Goldman?
Jake's a good guy. I think that we would find a way to talk it out, probably.
Tremendous. More seriously, so now we chatted real quick before the show. You're going to take a different seat. You're going to be in charge of being the CTO of sort of this combination of teams. What's your forecast? How are you preparing for it? Are you worried at all?
No, excited. Yeah, it's interesting. People haven't asked me if I'm worried about this. Yeah, no, it hadn't occurred to me, which is probably pretty cool. No, the thing that I see is a ton of opportunity. A lot of great developers on the VeloMedia side. We just brought in the guys from Pixel Jar as well. At lunch yesterday, we had an hour-and-a-half meeting over our template coding standards, which was passionate and very satisfying. In that, even though people had differing opinions, everybody's end goal is we want this to be the best long-term way of doing things for the team. I think we do a pretty good job of keeping those arguments separate from the people making them, right? And to see people compromise during the meeting and saying, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? It's a little thing, but coding standards are important, especially to a technical team, right? Mm-hmm. We want, again, the idea of decisions having to be made and supported, and projects being supported by a team rather than just one person. So we want people rolling in and off of projects and stepping in to help out, that process to be as effective as we can make it. And coding standards and automation, all that stuff really helps.
Yeah, that's tremendous stuff. And going back to if you are a little bit of fear or doubt in going to the new position, I think it's great that it's not even on your mind. I think that's how most passionate entrepreneurs think. They're just going to tackle it. There is no doubt that it's not going to succeed or be a great experience because you're just going to go in and crush it anyway. So it's never really on your mind. So that's amazing stuff. I want to jump into the last two segments. Before I do, folks who are in today, you will hear the answer to the Matt Report Pro question, which will be Alex sort of giving his pointers or his sort of quick bullet points of thinking back to starting his business, things that he knows now that he would definitely put in place before launching a business. So if you are a Matt Report Pro member, mattreport.com/join, you become a Matt Report Pro listener, you can log into the site and get the answer. Last two segments. What's in your toolbox? What type of app do you use on a daily basis that gets you through the day? Something that folks might not know about that you're privy to, that you use to get your work done or manage the business, like an Evernote, but something more top secret.
Well, since I've been able to get back into development a little bit more, I guess I'd like to plug our Capsule tool, which is a product that we built on top of WordPress, and it's a journal for developers. And so it handles code snippets and things like that you might want to throw in. And the idea is it replaces kind of the Scratch document that you have open when you're working on a project. So you've got your plugin code or your theme code or something that's going on over here, and you've got this Scratch document where you're working through things, and you're experimenting, or you're taking notes, or keeping data sets, or things like that. And the idea is that all of those artifacts have some sort of future value. And so if you can capture those, then future you is going to be very thankful to present day you for doing that. So we've got so simple syntax for tagging things as projects and using tags and stuff like that. And the thing that's really cool is if you're working in a team, each person can have their own Capsule instance that they're using. They connect it to Capsule server, and they map any of their local projects to remote projects on the server. And whenever you create new entries, new posts that reference those projects, they get automatically replicated back to the server. And then on the server, you can go and you can filter by project, filter by contributor, however you want to look at it. And I know that it's super valuable for me to be able to go back and say, okay, this is the thought process I went through when I was building this feature. This is how it was intended to work. I tell one of my pieces of advice to developers is you should have two separate things that you do. You should have your thinking and you should have your coding. And you shouldn't be doing both at the same time. Like, your code shouldn't be how you figure out how to solve a problem. You want to solve the problem and then implement it in code. And I find Capsule to be an invaluable tool to be right there, and I can just start working through a problem. I'm just typing out pros, I'm typing out bullet lists, I'm typing out an outline of what I need to do for a specific piece of functionality. And then once I am happy with it there, then I go over to start implementing it. And I go back and forth and keep my notes back and forth. And it's really cool to go and then just kind of browse through a Capsule server and see other developers doing the same thing, and knowing that there's going to be, at some point in the future, one of those entries is going to totally save our butts.
Yeah. That's awesome. Where can folks grab that?
Crowdfavorite.com/capsule. It's a free product built on top of WordPress. WordPress obviously is a great tool for journaling. So it was really natural to build it on top of that.
Awesome. Good stuff. Great stuff. I'm going to jump into the lightning round. I'll ask you a series of quick questions. You'll have a series of quick answers. The one plugin you cannot live without besides your own?
I'd say caching plugin, Super Cache, Total Cache.
A favorite WordPress or business book?
Oh. I'll try to get back to you with something good. I don't have anything offhand.
No problem. What's a quote that you live or run by?
It's not a quote, but the biggest thing that I try to impress on our team is be intentional and always be improving the way we do things.
Very nice. What's the best business or career advice you ever received?
Actually, I really like what Matt Mullenweg has talked about in the creation of WordPress, and his shepherding of it to the point it is today is, I'm paraphrasing, but basically, good things happen when you give stuff away. And I think that can be applied at many different levels. Obviously, with WordPress, it's the entire product that's given away. But it can also be thought of in the way Chris Lemma talks about it, with giving away your time, giving away your advice, your ideas, being generous and well-intentioned. I think that doing those things, you're constantly creating value, and value is what lasts.
It's tremendous stuff. What's the longest a client project has ever taken?
So we have some clients that we've been working with for years, and they're just sort of like long, ongoing projects. So the longest client we've had a relationship with dates back to 2008 that we're active on.
Very nice.
But we've had individual projects take as many as 18 months due to a variety of reasons.
If you had to switch to another CMS, what would it be?
I'm not as knowledgeable about other CMSs. I think if I was going to switch to another CMS, I would probably look at switching languages. So I'd be looking at something that was maybe built on Node or something like that, although Ghost is probably not where I would be going.
I think that's what I say. Who should I interview next?
Have you had Chris on? Chris Lemma?
Yeah, I have. Too many times, actually. I talk about way too much.
And you said you talked to Shane already?
I had Shane, yeah.
Have you had Peter Chester on?
I have not.
Yeah, Peter's Shane's partner. He's an interesting guy, and I think he's a little bit more the technical, whereas Shane's the design and business side.
He actually tweeted to us when we started, "We'll work for good surf." We'll have to get him on. What's the one question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
This is a little bit. I get people asking me, how did you know to create all these plugins that you would be able to build your business on in the future? And they don't believe me necessarily when I tell them that that's not how it happened. That, there was no way to predict that this ecosystem was going to happen, right? Building plugins was not a means to an end. It was just something that I did. And I was fortunate that, reputation and word of mouth built from on top of that. And was it helpful in building my business? Absolutely. But it wasn't the way I tried to build my business. And I think the best evidence for that is to look at my history of releasing plugins and see how it's trickled off over time, because I just don't have time anymore. Yeah. If that was how I was trying to build my business, I'm doing it completely the wrong way. Yeah. So I think that that's a misconception that sometimes is frustrating for me to hear. But I think the larger lesson is just do interesting stuff, create value, and good things will happen.
Yeah. I can't agree anymore. I think actually maybe your future self came back in time and told you to do all this stuff and took off again because you've got some kind of crazy time traveling powers. But other than that, amazing interview, tremendous stuff to see from your perspective, being in WordPress business for so long and entrepreneurship for so long, and having that taste of the Silicon Valley stuff. It's just amazing. I wish you all the best success with VeloMedia and all the future stuff you have going on. Alex, where can folks find you on the web to say thanks?
My site, alexking.org. I've been blogging there since 2002. And on the business side, crowdfavorite.com.
Awesome. For those of you sticking around in the audience, we're going to jump over to the Matt Report Pro answer. And for those of you who are just listening to this over the regular podcast, if you want to hear the answers like this, it's mattreport.com/join to become a pro member. To be released this week, but if you're already hearing this, it's already released. This is my future self going back to my present self going to my future self and saying, here's what's going to happen. It's a great way to support the show and become part of a WordPress entrepreneur community. Other than that, I have to read ads from places you don't want me to read.